Hi there, I'm Grace Potma. I'm Director of Product supporting the OpenMRS Medical Record System community worldwide. And today in this video, we are going to talk about how to configure OpenMRS quickly. In other words, we are going to cover the basics of configuration files called Initializer configuration files. Don't worry, we'll explain. So what we're going to cover today, we are going to cover why we use these initializer, also known as inis, we sometimes call it inis. Why do we use these config files? How do you update these files? And we'll look at some examples from the community demo files from MECOM's Cambodia distribution and from the DRC distribution config files. And we'll work on some examples together. We'll do some example location configuration, drug configuration, and form configuration along with form translation. We'll also talk a bit about how to find help, like in the Initializer README is a great resource, as well as the OpenMRS Talk Forum. Let's get started. So when you are looking at an OpenMRS EMR, for example, this is the community test version of the OpenMRS EMR that anyone can log into to explore the demo of the medical record. Right now, I have this patient, George, open here. I have his chart open. And there's all kinds of things happening here. For example, there are different forms that I can choose from. If I can change my language, and I think that some of the forms should have some French content. Let's look at that together. Let's see, for example, this one has some French content. So you might be wondering, how does this French content get in here? How does the English content get in there? You may also be wondering, in addition to the form configuration, how do I configure the location options? Like if I wanted to change this to say ward 123, how would I do that? Or you might be wondering, how do we edit things like the drug options that are available for George? For example, if we wanted to add paracetamol, how would we make sure that we add paracetamol or acetaminophen? We'll show you some examples of how to do all of this today. So everything I just mentioned, here's an example of a code repository. This is the OpenMRS Global Community Demo content. This is the demo content file. And specifically, we are going to go into configuration. And in configuration today, the initializer content that I will train you in, specifically, it's under the backend configuration file here. So go into backend configuration. Once you're in there, look at all of these files and all of these different types that are covered. These are all different types of configuration that people can set up. Now, I have good news for you. I am not a programmer by background. I'm a nurse by background. I've been in product management for 10 years, but I was never trained in JSON or anything like that. But if I can do it, so can you. So don't be intimidated. I'm going to show you some examples of how to edit these things today. Now I want to show you some other examples. So for example, under the forms, you saw that there were quite a few form examples in the demo that we were looking at earlier. Let's have another look here. Here we can see these different form options. Well, these options are configured here in this forms file. Now, the reason we have the initializer module, all of these configuration files, they are supported by a module in OpenMRS called Initializer, or inis as we sometimes call it. Initializer is this really nice module that when you launch or reboot your server, it double checks all of these configuration files to see what content does your distribution want, and have there been any. The group that invented this module was a group called MECOM Solutions, who are still active members of the community today. And the reason they invented the Initializer module was because they had so many customers all over the world, and they needed to change the content easily. And they needed someone like a project manager to be able to update the content. And if the server went down at a site, you did not want to have to redo the content. You can actually administer a lot of content through this administration screen, which should only be visible to like very specialized administrators. But for example, you can manage things like the locations here in the user interface. Here, you don't need to use the JSON file. However, it's easier to manage all of your configuration in one place in these JSON files. That is why now in 2025, we often recommend that distributions get used to using these configuration files instead of using the user interface. This is just a more stable way. It's also more easy to version control. But you can use this interface. But today I'm focusing on training you in how to use these initializer config files for backend configuration. So that's the why. Now let's talk about how you update these files. Well, the most helpful thing that I can show you today is this one README here on GitHub. Here you can see that the Initializer module code has a really thorough README. This shows you all of the different types of configuration that Initializer module supports. Furthermore, most of those file types have documentation. So for example, today one of the examples we will look at is the drugs configuration. And you can see there's a whole README specifically on how to handle the drugs CSV content. In fact, everything, even though I keep mentioning JSON, it's actually CSV. All these files have CSV most of the time. Okay, let's look at another example. So I pointed you to the community demo here. Sorry about that guy up there. Okay, so I pointed you to the community demo code. Let's open the drugs one just as an easy example. Here is where those drugs are configured. For example, earlier I mentioned paracetamol. You can see that the reason paracetamol did not come up is because there's no paracetamol spelled in this configuration file, only acetaminophen, which is a different name for that drug. We could change that by changing this configuration file, and we're going to do that example very soon. But I want to show you another example. This is an example from a site, a distribution in Cambodia. This distribution, in their configuration files for OpenMRS, they have quite a few descriptions or example files. So we can see, for example, you don't have to make your files public. That was just this example, but you can see, for example, that they've configured. Let's see if they have paracetamol. They do not. They have other options though. So you can see how they configured their drugs. And last but not least, let's look at the locations example. Here in the DRC distribution, you can see here, I'm selecting a location. Let's go ahead in there. And now if we wanted to see where did that list of locations come from, let's look at that code here. This is the code for Path DRC's instance of OpenMRS. So here, let's go to the distro. No, I'm sorry, that was wrong. No, that was right. No, it was wrong. So here I am going to the OpenMRS content repository for Path DRC, and you can see the configuration folder here. Now, something you might get confused about is you might see that some OpenMRS groups, like this one, use an EMR repository. This is for the code that powers the EMR. So actually, the Initializer module would be installed here in the PathDRC EMR repository. But the content is in its own repository. The reason for that is when we do community, like global releases to the OpenMRS code, you will be able to directly compare or use that code in your EMR instead of having to figure out if there are any content differences. That's why we separate code from content anytime we can, to make the releasing and versioning and comparing easier for you. So we go to the content repository, and in the content repository, we can find the configuration file. We go in here, Backend Configuration, and here we can see where the locations are stored for this project. So when you are in this user interface and you click to change your location, let's say you wanted to add a new location here. Well, the way you would configure that in these files is you would edit. I do not have permission in this repository. In that case, I'm going to use the OpenMRS demo today to edit some files. So if I wanted to add a location, sorry, I'm in drugs. Let's go back to location. Okay, let's say I wanted to add a location. Let's call it Grace's location. Now, let's say I'm already confused. I don't know what to do. No problem. We would just go to the README file, which was here. So let's go find the README. Let's find the README for locations. When in doubt, go back to the documentation. There's locations. And here the README tells us what to do. It explains that you need a few files. You don't need all of, you need a few pieces of data or columns. You don't need all of them. So let's go ahead and do this example. Now, let me go back to the code here. So for Grace's location, there are a few things we need. The first thing is a unique ID. This you can generate from anywhere. Personally, I really recommend and use this website. It's called uuidgenerator.net. If you use this website, you can refresh the page and it will always give you a new unique ID. So personally, I use this. So first we need a UID. We paste. Okay, that's the first field. The next one is, actually, let me zoom in so you can see better. Void and retire. Well, we don't want to void or retire this, so because it's a new location, it didn't close down or anything. So we have the name, Grace's location. We add a description like demo purposes only. Parent, there's no parent. Login location, I'm actually just going to reuse what we see here for a number of these. Outpatient, Ubuntu hospital. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to say that it is part of Ubuntu, and then I'm just going to copy the rest of these commas here to make things fast for us. Okay, like that. And now if we were to, all right, this is just going to show me a diff. This would update the configuration table with that Grace's location. I'm going to cancel this because I don't want to add that to our demo content, but it would have added another row here that said name, Grace's location, description, testing, demo purposes, parent, Ubuntu hospital, etc. Then the next time you update your distribution, that content would be automatically added. That's what's beautiful, is that you don't have to worry about like going into the admin settings for every single site. You know that if they have this version of your initializer file of your content, then they'll be okay. They'll have the configuration you wanted. Okay. So that was locations. Let's look at another example here. We're going to look at drugs. So let's go ahead and open the drugs configuration file. So in this, oh, I'm so sorry, too many things happening here. There it is. In this, I lost the DRC one, sorry. Let me just grab that GitHub, and we need to go to the content one. We go to configuration, Backend Configuration. So we just talked about locations. Now we're going to talk about drugs. There's so many we could talk about here, like programs, for example. If you wanted to add another program name, like let's say you wanted to add MCH as a program. Let's look at what we have in the demo for the global community. Let's see what programs. You can see we have quite a lot configured here. Okay, so you can see for programs, we just have 4 examples. We should really have more in the demo, but you can add things like maternal child health, PMTCT. You can add things like oncology, whatever programs you need. You can add here. The next one I wanted to talk about, was drugs. For example, currently, I know that in the configuration for DRC, there's some drugs missing. Actually, it looks like there needs to be a drugs file. You would add a file, create a new file, and here's what it would look like. It would just look like drugs drc.csv, for example. And then we are going to make a sheet like this. The good news is that fortunately the government does have a list of drugs that they want. So together we are going to add some examples here. And since these are good examples, I'm going to add them to the OpenMRS demo. Please excuse me. Okay, so let's edit this file together now. Okay. So the first thing we need is a unique ID, and I will explain why. Because the way this drugs list is, think of it like a formulary. Think of it like a store where these 2 drugs, but this is paracetamol 300 milligrams injectable. Those are 2 different medications. And so we need this paracetamol to have a different ID than the 300 milligram paracetamol. We need that one to have a different ID as well. And also the 500 milligram. Let's make that together now. Okay, so for example, we're going to need a unique ID for all of these 3 examples. No problem, we will get that from our unique ID site. And we are going to, we're not going to need void or retire. And then the name, paracetamol or paracetamol, just put in whatever translated name you prefer. It's fine. So paracetamol. And then the next thing, we want to specify 100 milligrams. And then we're also going to do 500. I think 500 was the next one because it was tablet. Okay. And then the last one, was 300. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is concept drug. Okay, this scares a lot of people. Don't be afraid. This is just whatever concept you are using for that drug. So for example, let me go into the OpenMRS concept dictionary for the demo. You can see, for example, that for acetaminophen, the concept that we are using is this one. This is the concept behind the scenes that we are using for acetaminophen. So you can see 7016116. So if we look at our configuration file, you will see for acetaminophen 70116. 70116. Why is this the same for 325 milligrams versus 0 milligrams? By the way, this is a bad example. You shouldn't have any zeros. They should all have a strength, because you never get a pill that's 0 strength. Pills always have a strength. Okay. So for example, let's say I did not know what is the UID for this. The first thing we will do is, in general, for the OpenMRS community, we recommend this standard of terminology. You might prefer SNOMED, you might prefer ICD, you might prefer CPT, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. You might prefer RX norm codes, whatever you prefer. We prefer CL. So in this case, I'm going to look up the code for paracetamol. Here we go. And specifically, I want the drug, just paracetamol. I'm just going to filter this. This product, by the way, that we're looking at right now is called OCL, Open Concept Lab OCL. Not the same as CL. CL just happens to live inside of OCL. Okay, we want drugs. Let's just check that. Okay, so we want the drug that is only paracetamol. These ones are combinations of different drugs combined in one pill. We just want paracetamol. So here it is, and it's got this external ID here. So as long as you have that concept in your dictionary, then that's fine. You can go ahead and use it here. Now I know we have it because I just looked it up here, if you might remember. How would you look it up if you were using the DRC distribution, for example, or your own distribution? Let's have a look. So you would go to your system administration, would view your concept dictionary, and you would type what you're looking for, and there it is. So you do already have this concept. However, interestingly, it looks like someone invented the ID. It looks like this did not come from CL. That is interesting. I'm actually surprised. Let's see if there's any others. Okay. No, you do have the CL code. I'm sorry. So there was a duplicate. But this is the one that I recommend using. Why? Because it has so many synonyms. It has translation, English and French. The other one did not. And most importantly, it has mappings to RX Norm and SNOMED CT. Okay, so sorry, that was a long explanation. Let's copy this concept for paracetamol, and we are going to use that ID here. This is telling the system that the type of drug is this one, paracetamol. It's basically like a way of encoding this word. So that's step one. We need to tell it what type this is. Now we need to tell it, so that was the concept for the drug. Now we need the concept for the form. By form, they mean, is it a pill, a tablet, an injection, an inhaler? What is it? So we're going to find the concept for the form. For example, for the type, here, the 300 milligram is injectable. So we will look for the code for injection. Let's find the code for injection. So I'm going to once again go to CL, and we're going to go inject. And I don't want drug, I actually want procedure. Oh, sorry, no, not procedure. Solution for injection is probably the right one. So I see the ID here is 1516. So we will use that. Let's go back to our file here. I just want to see if I used that for any others. Okay, you can see I use 1513 a lot. I think that's the code for the pills. So I think that's fine because it's a similar, like they're together, you know. So let's actually just look up, just for my own peace of mind. I'm going to add that 1516, but let's just double check the 1513. You can see here it's a tablet miscellaneous. So actually we are going to use this 1513 ID here. Oh yeah, see, I did this wrong. This is the injectable one. It should be here with the injectable paracetamol, whereas this one is a tablet or compound, just like we learned here, comprimé. I'm going to go with tablet for that. So let us use injectable 1516 here, and we will use tablet here. And then for strength, okay, now, so you remember here, we told it was paracetamol 100 milligrams. We told it was paracetamol with this concept. Actually, we should make this even more specific. I'm going to say tablet after this naming. Actually, no, that's okay. Okay, paracetamol. Now next just since our demo files are in English, I'm going to fix this name. Okay, we told the system that this name is this code. Now we need to tell the system what the dosage form strength is, sorry. So you see here, we have the milligrams here as well. Okay, so we'll do the same thing here. So we're going to say 100 milligrams, 500 milligrams, and 300 milligrams. Okay, that's it. So now we just need those unique IDs. Let's grab that from here. We'll refresh this. Okay, I have a new unique ID here. I just copied it and we're going to put it back in a file here. Okay, now let's go back. Let's copy that one. There we go. And then the last one, let's refresh for a new unique ID. Copy this one. Okay, and there we go. We have now created the configuration for these 3 types of paracetamol, the tablets and the injection. And once we save this, I recommend that you do this through a PR. So this will say update drugs content with paracetamol. Many demo users look for paracetamol in our demo and are confused when they only see acetaminophen. This will improve the drug order demo experience. Okay, now I'm going to make this as a PR. So I will just propose that, and then one of my colleagues will have a quick look. I should add the source file that inspired the doses is from the DRC. Okay. And that's it. Once your colleague merges this, or once you merge it, then your file will be updated. And that means that when you are in your OpenMRS system, let's go to a patient. That means that the work you just did will now be available. So for example, you would be able to, we haven't reset the system, but so you would be able to find those 3 options that I just searched for. So for example, if you search for paracetamol, you would find 100, 300, 500, or if I specifically typed in 500, it would show up with the injectable option. Okay. Wow, so that was a hard one. Good job for staying with me. Forms is easier. Let's talk about forms next. Okay, forms. So if you have already done the form builder course on YouTube or in the OpenMRS, you already know how to build forms, but a very fast refresher for everyone. So I'm just going to switch this to English for a moment. Okay. So here is the form builder where you can use a user interface to create and manage your forms. For example, we're going to do a simple one together. Here is this one called SOAP Note Template. Let's go in and edit it. So you can see I have this very simple form. It just says subjective findings, objective findings, assessment of the patient, and plan for the patient. Now, I have built this using the user interface, and we can do things like move questions around, And did you see that when I did that, this JSON file here changed? So let me show you again. I moved it, it changed. I move it back, it updated. So what I'm going to do is copy this JSON that was created for me here in the builder. And I'm actually going to save it forever by adding it to our configuration. Let's go back to our configuration. This time, we're still going backend. This time, we're going to go to the forms one. Sorry about the name, Empath Forms. It's like an old version of the forms, but the file is still okay. Use the Empath Forms file. So here you can actually see the SOAP Note template, that simple one. I already pasted that JSON here. I'm not comfortable writing JSON myself, so this helps me. So I just paste that whole file, And now anytime someone copies this repository and starts up their own version of the system, as long as they have that configuration file, they will always have this SOAP note form. Let me go back to what it looks like for a patient. They will always have this form available here. But let us say we wanted to translate this into French or any other language, actually. It's actually not too hard at all. Do you see all of the places here that say label? Those are going to be important for translation. So if we're working on a distribution now, step 1 is decide which forms you want to always have. Then you put them here. If you've got any that are like draft whatever, I recommend maybe remove them if you're trying to get production ready. Maybe save them somewhere else, but otherwise they'll show up. Anyway, you can hide them, but if you already have too many forms, a way to simplify it is here in the configuration. Just reduce the number of files. Okay, sorry. Let's go back here. So you see there's the empath forms that tells them what forms you want. But then there's the form translations. If you built your forms in one language and now you want to have them available in another language too, this is where we're going to do that. You can write your forms in French or any other language. You don't have to start with English. But if you did, this is how you would translate it. Or if you started with French and you want to translate to Spanish or English or Portuguese or whatever, and then this is how you would do it. So today I have an example here. You can see I have an English. This is a really big form. It's huge. It's our biggest form. You can see we've got all this text in English, and then we've got it in French. We are going to build the same thing together now for the SOAP note, the small one that I showed you. Let's build this example together now. Okay, so I am going to follow some documentation to help me. So once again, let's look at the NECOM documentation. Yeah, here we go, the Initializer documentation. Let's go back. Let's go into the empath. Sorry, the form translation. Yeah, here it is. Empath forms translations. Okay, so it's going to tell us the structure that you need, both the title structure and the JSON file. So I'm actually going to copy this JSON file example and work with that, since I can't remember JSON off the top of my head, but I do know how to work with it. And okay, well, just remember this underscore. Okay. So let's copy this title approach in our own one here. So we're going to add a file and we're going to create a new file. You can do this in your own code editor. You don't have to use GitHub. I just personally prefer it, but that's because, again, I'm not as technical as some people. Okay, so I'm specifically using the SOAP note template here. Let me just look at, I'm trying to remember how I worded it here. So this is the SOAP note template. That's the title. I'm going to use that. So we're going to call it, and we're going to, or I need to look at this, underscore translations underscore French. Okay, let's start there. Sorry. Okay. All right, so the unique ID, I need the correct unique ID. This time we're not going to make it up because we already have one. When we created our form, it would have been generated. So I just need to find the unique ID. Okay, it has not actually been specified for this form. In that case, I think I'm going to try skipping it and we'll see what happens. Let me just double check again how I handled that in the other ones. Okay, I did have a unique ID. Interesting. Okay, I'll have to maybe update this video with a note once I find out whether this is required or not. Okay, we're going to skip that for now. We're going to give it a name. Since we already have a name, let's go back to that JSON file. It's the SOAP note template. Let's copy that specific name because I want it to match. Okay, and now let's add the form name translation. Now, my French is not good enough that I'm comfortable making this up for you, so I'm going to use my friend Deepal here. Please forgive me. Okay, so this is what we'll use as the translation. Okay, description, French translations for soap note template. Okay, the language that we are translating into is French, and this is what we're really needing to do, is the translations. Do you remember I said the labels were going to be important? Well, that's because those are what we need to translate. So let's look for everything here that's a label. So here we can find the different labels that appear to the user. We've got a label for soap. This one's actually going to be the same. So here, let's go to our file here. That's going to be just soap because it's the same letters, I believe. Then the next one is soap note. The translation for that, I think, not soap. Okay, these ones were just examples. Let's get rid of these. We don't need them. Now, next label, subjective findings. Okay, now we're going to use that one. Okay, and now I need to ask people for that as well. Okay, the next one, objective, sorry. I think we know what this is going to be, but this gives me something quick copy paste here. Okay, and now we want the next label, assessment. Okay, evaluation. Okay, and then the last ones, we're almost done because this is a very short, very short one with only open text fields. The last one is plan. So let's find out what that is. Oh, plan. Okay, wonderful. Le plan. That's fine. Okay, so let's try. And that's it. Congratulations, you have finished the translation file. That's how you do the translations for the forms. We are working on I forgot a comma there. We are working on a interface in the form builder so that you can do the translations inside here. But I don't think that will be production ready for another, more than a few months. So I think for now, it is a good thing to learn to use this kind of formatting. Okay, so we have our first file here. I'm going to commit this. So this creates an additional translation file example, which is significantly shorter than the other demo example. Okay, I'm going to do this as a pull request. Once my PR is merged, then it will, our environment will rebuild, and then this translation will be available. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do, there's one more thing we have to do actually for the forms. So here, just because I have this French one, I actually, oh, sorry, I need to go into my branch. Which branch is it? Probably 8. Let's find out. Yeah, there it is. Do you see how I have a French one, FR, but there's no English one? If you need the English language as well, for whatever reason, you need to also have an English file here. In fact, you can see with this example, I have English and French. The good news is it's really easy because you just copy what you already did here. So I'm just going to create a new file with the exact same name convention, except that this is probably why the UUID matters actually. So let me go ahead and grab that form again here. Sorry, there we go. We'll grab this one. Okay, I'm just going to, oh no, this is the wrong one. I need to go to my branch. I need to refresh this. Okay, there's my French. I actually want to edit this because I want to give it a unique ID. So let me just refresh and copy so that I can link them. Okay. Just add that directly to the branch. Okay, now I have the UUID. So now I can copy all of this. The English file is so easy because everything is just the English file. Did I update this name? Yeah, I did. You see how I put EN for English? And I change this to EN. I'll just leave the description blank for now. So then it's all just the same. So the English partner file is boring, but really easy to make for translations. Okay. Okay, and now we have the English file. Well, we will once I commit directly to my branch here. And then we have our translation files. Okay, that was a lot of information. If you've survived this long for the video, great job. So as you saw throughout those examples, I will often look at the READMEs for the different things that we have to do, because it's easy to forget all these different options. And I only covered 3 examples today, but as you can see here, there are a lot of other things you might decide to edit, like roles, encounter types, privileges, relationship types, like if you wanted to change the options for like father, daughter, or other types of relationships to record, identifier sources, if you wanted to configure where identifiers are coming from, order types. There's a lot that you could possibly configure. You don't have to configure all of it, just whatever you want for your distribution. So for example, for the path one right now, we have probably 1/2 to 1/3 of those examples covered, like visit types. For example, let's see what visit types are encoded here. We have HIV new visit, return visit, pharmacy pickup, lab visit, facility visit. You can see all of these from the user perspective when you start a visit. Let's start a visit for, let's see, is there any patient who doesn't have, hers is active. Let's find one who's not active. Okay, this one is not active right now. So when we start the visit, I'm sorry, I need the English for a moment. Okay, when we start the visit, these are the options here: HIV new visit, return visit, pharmacy, lab, facility. All of that came from this guy, this list here. It was configured here. So don't be embarrassed about using the README, the Initializer README here. And I'll copy, I'll copy the link and include it in the notes with this video. And then the other place to find help is the OpenMRS online forum. Please don't be hesitant to reach out here. This is where people from around the world help each other with OpenMRS questions. You are not alone. We are a community. We try to help each other answer questions. So please, welcome to post any questions here as well. Just tag it with Initializer. When you write your topic, just use Initializer, for example, or you don't even need to remember that, it's fine. Well, I hope you enjoyed this really long session. If you do have any questions or feedback on this video, please let me know. Reach out on OpenMRS Talk Forum. We'd love to hear from you. Enjoy and have fun configuring your own distribution of OpenMRS.